In the heart of the turbulent 20th century, a narrow strip of water in the arid lands of Egypt became the epicenter of an international crisis that held the world in suspense. The Suez Canal, once seen as a symbol of progress and prosperity, became the stage for a dramatic showdown that would test the limits of diplomacy and the potential for global conflict. This is the story of the Suez Crisis of 1956, a tale of political intrigue, military gambles, and the delicate dance of world powers on the brink of war. As the world watched, holding its breath, the fate of the Suez Canal hung in the balance, and its waters would bear witness to a pivotal moment in history. Further in the video, we will journey through the seeds of discord, the risky gambles, and the world's collective gaze upon the unfolding drama. The Suez Crisis was more than just a political confrontation. It was a crucible in which the future of the post-colonial world was forged. Join us as we delve into this gripping narrative, exploring the emotions and suspense that surrounded this historical turning point. Welcome to International Hotspot, and today we'll be talking about the Suez Crisis of 1956. But before we get down to business, why don't you consider subscribing to our channel? Chapter 1: The Canal that Ignited the Crisis. The Suez Canal, a marvel of human engineering, was brought into existence by the visionary French engineer Ferdinand de Lesseps. Conceived in the mid-19th century, the canal's creation aimed to provide a shortcut linking the Mediterranean and Red Seas, facilitating faster maritime trade routes. The motivation behind this ambitious project was twofold: economic and strategic. It aimed to reduce the long and treacherous voyage around the southern tip of Africa, thereby saving time and costs for shipping, while also advancing French and European interests in the east. De Lesseps' vision culminated in the canal's inauguration in 1869, forever altering global trade and navigation. In the mid-20th century, the Suez Canal stood as a symbol of international collaboration and a vital lifeline for global trade. It was the shortest route between Europe and the lands of the Indian Ocean, connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea and allowing ships to bypass the treacherous journey around the southern tip of Africa. The Suez Canal was a beacon of progress and prosperity, but it also held the potential for conflict, as the world would soon discover. Chapter 2: Seeds of Discord. Tensions had been simmering for years, but it was in 1956 that the world witnessed the culmination of a crisis that had been years in the making. At the heart of the issue was the Egyptian president Gamal Abdel Nasser, who nationalized the Suez Canal, seizing control from the British and French companies that had run it for decades. This move was met with outrage in London and Paris, as they saw the canal as a vital link to their colonial interests and a strategic asset. Chapter 3: A Risky Gamble. In London and Paris, leaders viewed Nasser's actions as a direct challenge to their colonial dominance and a threat to the Suez Canal's stability. They believed that Nasser's nationalization had to be countered with force, and so they hatched a daring plan. A secret agreement was reached with Israel, who was already in conflict with Egypt, to launch a joint military operation that would retake the Suez Canal. The plan was risky, and it would not go unnoticed by the international community. Chapter 4: The World Watches. The world looked on in suspense as the crisis unfolded. The United States, led by President Dwight D. Eisenhower, was deeply concerned about the potential for a wider conflict in the Middle East. The US feared that the Suez Crisis could trigger a broader confrontation between the superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, who were already engaged in the Cold War. The United Nations became the stage for intense diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis peacefully. The international community was divided, with the United States and the Soviet Union at odds over the best course of action. The world was on the brink, and the Suez Crisis had become a global flashpoint. Chapter 5: The Crisis Resolved. Amidst the tension and the looming specter of war, a resolution emerged. International pressure and the realization of the potential for a catastrophic conflict eventually led the British, French, and Israeli forces to withdraw from Egypt. The Suez Crisis of 1956 came to an end, and Nasser retained control of the canal. The Suez Crisis marked a turning point in the post-colonial world. It demonstrated the limitations of old imperial powers in a changing geopolitical landscape and the emergence of new players on the global stage. It also highlighted the importance of diplomacy and the dangers of brinkmanship in the nuclear age. Chapter 6: Conclusion. The Suez Crisis of 1956 was a defining moment in the history of the Suez Canal and the world. It showcased the complexities of international politics, the dangers of military intervention, and the power of diplomacy to prevent a catastrophic conflict. The crisis left a lasting impact on the region and the world, shaping the course of history and the way nations approach conflicts in the post-colonial era. The Suez Crisis was a story of international suspense and diplomacy, of nations on the brink, and of a crisis that could have spiraled into a global catastrophe. In the end, though, it was a lesson in the perils of misunderstanding and the necessity of peaceful resolution. The Suez Canal, which had been at the center of the crisis, remained a symbol of both cooperation and conflict in the ever-evolving tapestry of history. And on that note, it's time for us to call it a day, but we do hope that you liked the video and found it informative. Subscribe to our channel and don't forget to click the bell icon. Your valuable suggestions are very important to us, so do post them in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video.